Right now I'm working on a book that takes a very different approach to the material culture of Jews in later antiquity. And my most recent research that was basically taking a comprehensive approach to graffiti written by Jews throughout the Greco-Roman world. So the goal for that book was to try to see if I could write a history of Jewish populations who were otherwise undocumented. They left markings of their own, which seem really abstract and random until you look at them systematically. So the effort of that book was to try to see if one could write a history of elite and non-elite populations based on these types of markings. So that's sort of my broader historical project, to sort of document non-elite Jews throughout the Greek and Roman world, also throughout Arabia, through a sort of non-conventional, unconventional, non-literary evidence. My graduate work and my dissertation were mostly archaeological. It was addressing populations that were only documented through things. It's very, very hard to write histories of populations who are only documented through things because it's very, very abstract. And so I think most of my research has been building since that time, and the graffiti project was really sort of the apex of that in certain ways, because sometimes you really just have scribbles on the wall. People might have written drawn a ship or a lion, or written a message like "good luck on your resurrection," and the goal is to try to figure out a way to take that information and sort of process it in a meaningful way, and to sort of document the undocumented in history in this particular way. So this has been sort of, I think the project in a way has been evolving to try to achieve these goals just through lots of different types of materials through time. What I do is really cross-disciplinary. It merges fields of history and art history and religious studies and study of inscriptions and anthropology too. Traditional historiographies of Jews throughout the ancient world are written around a framework of text. That is to say, often people will look to ancient historians and they say this about the Jews, and people look to archaeological evidence to sort of support or contradict those frameworks that they've imposed. But those literary sources are not necessarily accurate, as we obviously know. They're not without bias. And so my interest was to try to see if you could use the material record to look at these people from the inside out, to say, okay, what can we say about how Jews and their neighbors moved through ancient marketplaces? What was it like for Jews to go to the theater and see theatrical competitions next to non-Jewish neighbors? What does that tell us about their lives in a way that sort of consulting Jewish authors or Christian authors or early Muslim authors, the perspectives are not necessarily the same. So having a dialogue between those sources is really different when you sort of decenter the evidence you're looking at. I love teaching the death and afterlife in the ancient world class. Students really experience what it's like to be an archaeologist in a sense. How do we learn about people's beliefs of death and afterlife by going to cemeteries, which nobody's actually using anymore. I also love to teach a course that I've taught for the past 2 years on visual history through objects. It's sort of revelatory for a lot of students when they realize that you can actually write historiography through things like tattoos or graffiti. Both the books that I wrote, I could never have written without extensive time in caves, in catacombs, in the field. I want students to have the same experience. It's much more tactile than often they have otherwise. So that I've really enjoyed teaching, and I hope to teach it again in the spring. Consistently, I've had students sort of contribute their perspective or life experience, and it transforms the classroom. So I think the students here love to learn, a really diverse population, and I feel really lucky to have the opportunity to teach here.